everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast. I'm back from York and the band is back together. TC, Ross, myself, all here to preview some more racing action this weekend, the focus being on Sandown. And pleased that I left the podcast in a good way. We had a good weekend last weekend, thanks to TC's selection. Subsequent and Quinaults landed for this podcast. So we're in a good vein of form as we're coming to this sort of nearing the mid to end point, if you could call it that, of the flat season. I think the main festivals are done. We've still got a lot of very good racing coming up, and probably some of the more middle distance sorts from a 2-year-old's perspective are coming out. And we're going to look at a very good 2-year-old race in the Solario Stakes, but before we get there, we're going to start with the Atalanta Stakes, which is for 3-year-olds and up. It's a Group 3 over a mile at Sandown on the weekend. And this is a race where over the years, fillies and mares only, it's probably lacked a little bit of star quality, but maybe we have that this year with Tamfana coming back in grade. Oisin Murphy and David Manuzia teaming up as they have been throughout the course of this season. Doha, Hector Crouch and Rafe Beckett's in there. A Royal Ascot winner. You've got Doom and Relica, another 3-year-old. Bright Thunder is a 3-year-old as well. Shazia is a 4-year-old. And there are a couple of others more. I bring up their ages because, Tom, I'll start with you. The 3-year-old record in this race, it's a bit of a mixed bag, but maybe we've lacked a really standout horse to make this quite a sexy race, for want of a better word. And I suppose Tamfana brings that really good classic form into this and kind of makes this race a better version than we've seen over the years.
Yeah, absolutely spot on there. I mean, the Atalanta this year revolves around Tamfana. When you're looking at this race as a punter, it's do you want to take the short price, 11 to 10 on Tamfana, or are you looking for an each-way alternative? That's the only real talking point, the first glance of the race. That's what you think immediately. Now, I had a deep dive in some of the trends. As you say, 3-year-olds, mixed bag with the 4-year-olds over the last decade or so. The average winner of the race, though, in the last 10 years, has recorded an RPR, a Racing Post rating of 111 in the race itself. I think it was actually 110.7, but obviously rounded up to 111, and boasted an official rating at the time of the race, so pre-race going off, of 105. Now, on that evidence, Tamfana, it's already proven that she's well capable of winning this race on official ratings, and she's already posted 3 RPRs better than 111. So she's higher and better than any other horse that we've seen win this race in the last 10 years. On that evidence, she should be winning. So then it comes down to a couple of points. One, do you think she deserves her current mark? Now, many people may say no, she's been flattered on a couple of occasions. Maybe she got the run of the race in the Guineas. Maybe last time it wasn't the deepest of events over in France. However, I'd say she does. I think 111 is plenty fair enough for this filly. You know, she's been super consistent this year. She hasn't been beaten far at the top level on the last 3 attempts. And she's just proved really versatile when it comes to trip. Obviously, the Guineas over a mile and a half last time. What is her ideal trip? I think probably a mile. And therefore, dropping back to this distance in the Atalanta is surely going to be a positive for her. Surely if she just replicates that Guineas 4th, she'll win this race. Now, there are a couple of improvers in the field, but they have to improve a fair amount to beat Tamfana. And then there are a couple of 4-year-olds who are not too far away on official figures, but may just have less improvement to come from them. And they also have to give £6 weight for age allowance. I think 11 to 10 is a fair price. She probably has more than the 47% chance of winning this race, and therefore I'm happy to put Tamfana up as my selection.
Do you think she could go shorter than this? Because I think she should be. I think she should be odds on with the form that she shows, with the rating. She's far clearer than everything else. The weight allowance she gets, the genuine Group 1 form. I suppose the only query is, as you say, what is her optimum? She's coming from a mile and a half back to a mile. But I think on pedigree, this might be by the limit she wants. She probably is more of a 10 furlong filly, but maybe her quality will outweigh that.
Yeah, I think so. I think she'll be definitely odds on by the start of the race. She just stands out in every single area when you're looking on paper in the Atalanta now. If horse racing was as easy as saying this horse is a clear standout, therefore they definitely will win, then we'd all be multimillionaires by now. But based on what I can see, I see no real negative for Tamfana, and I actually like the trip for her. As I say, 11 to 10 is a very fair price.
Yeah, okay, that's a pretty comprehensive case, as it should be for Tamfana. Davin Manuzia probably frustrated that this filly has not got a win to her name this season. She'd be running well without winning, and she deserves it. Ross, she's a daughter of Soldier Hollow, who was a sort of a 10 furlong horse, not quite a middle distance horse, as you sort of feel like he seems to be on profile. But I think the real element to this race is that there's no standout older horse that you think that she'd be worried about, or is there a slow burner in here who just is getting to their best and might just not be at their peak yet, and we're still sort of learning about them?
Yeah, I think you've absolutely, between the pair of you, absolutely hit the nail on the head. This is a really tricky race to figure out. I think TC's right in that Tamfana is definitely worth a 111 rating, but just instinctively, I wanted to take her on because I don't like horses where I feel that connections. This wasn't the plan. The plan has been to step her up in trip, and I think they're slightly backtracking, trying to figure out what it is she wants. On her form, her best single piece of form has come in that 1,000 Guineas run where she flashed home, finished really strongly. She looked for all that she was going to be better at 10 furlongs, maybe even 12. Not sure it's particularly worked out. You could perhaps pick holes in how the races have panned out for her. But then I come back to, was she flattered? And I think maybe Amelka was flattered as well by winning the 1,000 Guineas, and they closed off a collapsing pace. Is she going to get such an overly strong pace to run at here? She's in stall 7. Are they going to ride her forward and come forward from stall 7? Are they going to drop her in from stall 7 and ride for luck? Is the ground going to be on a bit on the lively side for her over this trip? Because Soldier Hollows definitely want a bit of cut in the ground. So for all that she is definitely the best horse in the race, and like is plenty of egg on face potential here, she just absolutely sluices it up. There was just enough to make you want to take her on, particularly when it's a race where you can have an each way alternative selection. You haven't got to find something to beat her. And I think you're right. I think there is a older, slow burning progressive horse in the form of Doom. She's only got a maiden win to her name, but I think it's hard to argue that she hasn't taken a big step forward this year as a 4-year-old. She was third in the Duke of Cambridgeshire. Bumped and lost balance, I thought, at a crucial time. I don't think it was the winning and losing of the race, but she definitely got unbalanced as the race was quickening. She's not a filly that's got an electric turn of foot over this trip anyway. She's a grinder over the mile. Then went back to the Valiant Stakes last time, beaten 3 lengths, trying to give £8 to Friendly Soul, who's won easily in a Group 2 last time. The margin of victory for Friendly Soul wasn't as big last time, but she was idling close to the line and they closed on her. So I don't think that's a bad piece of form. Doom's got a nice draw in stall 2. I think she can be ridden forward, be ridden prominently. And I like the Sandown track for her as well, the long home straight and the continual climb. I think that suits a horse that you can just wind it up and wind it up, which is what I think she is. She's 8-1, which is an each way price. William Haggis started slowly, flying along 30%, and he's been around that for about the last month. Tom Marquand at 20%, of course he is, because he rides a lot of William Haggis's horses. But I also think that just early part of the season, Tom Marquand's a jockey I really love. I think he's right up there. But just a couple of times, I just thought he made poor decisions. I think he's riding as well as I've ever seen at the moment. So I like that angle as well. I think he'll be positive from that forward, from the good draw. And say to Tamfana, come and get me. And if she does, she's the best horse on the day. But I just thought there was enough to take her on, and Doom is an each way price, so she's my selection.
Yeah, as I say, 8-1. The former Friendly Soul's been frank since she's gone on and won at Deauville in a better race. So Doom could be the one that's sort of creeping up to her best. She's probably a horse would have a Peter name for progression to come. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you say a pace angle. I see Spiritual, the one that has ran well at Sandown before, could go and make it a bit of a nice pace race. She's a horse that has won here before where she made all and could be a good target to aim at. I thought that would work out right for Doom. I agree about the ground for Tamfana. That would be a slight negative against her and the price. With that in mind, Doom I liked at an each way value. I'm also not going to put anyone off Choisir, who is not to be confused with Choisir, the very good sprinter of the Aussies. But Choisir, horse one for William Buick and Savannah Crisford, put up a really nice performance at Haydock last time, albeit in a lesser race, a listed race. But she'd had a couple of months off for whatever reason. I don't think things have been straightforward with her. She's probably making up for lost time. She was a handicapper at this time last year, but she's bred to be better than that. And she really crept through the Dick Kern last time like a good horse. She'll definitely need a good pace to aim at, which, as I said, could come from Spiritual. She's 11-1. I don't think she'll be winning this, but I think she's a bit of a each way value, as you say. Myself and Ross happy to shop around for those, whereas Temfana is the right favourite, and she should be good enough despite just a couple of things, maybe not ideal in terms of the ground, but she's got solid Group 1 form. So that's the Atalanta Stakes. That's at 225 at Sandown. We're going to follow up with the 335, the Solario Stakes. This is where SBK are offering a price boost. So make sure to get involved with this race. We've got 8 runners lining up. And I suppose I've looked back and I always think the Solario Stakes, this is a race that has turned out to be, really worth following because you can get some Group 1 performers. And Too Darn Hot was a multiple Group 1 winner subsequently. The Derby winner, Massar. But actually, over the last few years, Silver Knot, he's been great internationally, but it's not been phenomenal. So I think it needs a bit of a boost. But I suppose with the way it is, it being a 7 furlong race, we don't really know how good these horses are yet. And they're all kind of stepping out of novice maiden company. And it's really revolves at the moment from a betting perspective around Field of Gold, around 9-4. Kieran Schumacher, Jonathan Thady Gosden, they've sort of been waiting for one. Well, Kieran Schumacher has been waiting for one that's going to really sort of up the association to the next level. TC, what did you make of him on second start, the son of Kingman, and what he did? Does he deserve to be the top of the market for that performance?
Yeah, look, I respect Field of Gold. 2 good runs so far. He was slowly away on debut and then ran on nicely. And then last time sat up with the speed, kicked clear and stayed on powerfully. I just think 7 furlongs is probably the lower limit of his trip. He's definitely a miler already. He's probably going to develop into a 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles horse next year. And do I want to take a short price on a horse that I don't think will love the distance? No, I know he's won over it, of course. But now he's facing much better horses, winners, than he did last time up where he was in a maiden. So I don't know, it's mainly a price play against this horse, but I do respect Field of Gold. And as you say, these connections haven't had the best of years between them. Jonathan Thady Gosden have unleashed a couple of nice 2-year-olds in recent weeks, though. So maybe the future is a little bit brighter for the training partnership. The most notable trend in the Solario over the last few years is that the top of the market dominates. You look back over the last decade, 7 of the last 10 races have been won by the favourite. 9 of the last 10 renewals have been won by a horse priced at 9-4 or shorter, and no horse in the last decade has gone off and won at bigger than 4-1. This is a race that the market generally gets correct. You usually have a couple of standouts on form and potential upside, and I think you do this year as well. Now, Field of Gold is obviously one of them, but I actually prefer Royal Playwright for Andrew Balding. This horse took a lot of money on debut, albeit drifted in the 10 minutes prior to the race, but took money in the morning. Opened up 15-8, went off around 3-1. Sat close to the speed, kicked away powerfully and hit the line strongly. The pedigree for this colt is lovely. Lope de Vega out of Group 1 winner, Arabian Queen. The distance, again, 7 furlongs probably on the short side, but I actually liked how Royal Playwright handled it on debut, more than I did visually from Field of Gold, who seemed to be getting better in the final 100 yards, 50 yards as they approached the line. Andrew Balding is not a trainer that would put a horse in a race like the Solario, a 2-year-old, unexposed, young horse, in a race like the Solario if he didn't think they were capable of winning it. He's very much a long-term target trainer. And I like this placement. I think he believes Royal Playwright has the talent to go unbeaten so far in his career. And at the price around 4-5-1, I think he's a very fair bet in this race. I'd much prefer him at the prices than I do Field of Gold, I have to admit.
Okay, yeah, and he's going at a 71% runners to form rate. His horses are in really good form off the back of a very good York. Royal Playwright, as I say, which included a relation to Royal Playwright and See the Fire, who won on Saturday. So that's a son of Lope de Vega. There's another son of Lope de Vega in here, Matori Bay, who in a similar vein is 1 from 1, but was a very expensive yearling, is close relative of Aunt Pearl, a horse who ran to a very high level in America, and Rafe Beckett, another trainer that has to be so highly respected at this time of year. Now, all of these horses, Ross, have to be better than 102 rated Tiger Mask, and that's a pretty solid level from a rating perspective for a 2-year-old already. Carl Burke's horse, who was fourth to Maury City at Goodwood, but it probably sort of lesser down in the betting around 9-1 because he's a little bit more exposed. Do you think the horses with the less experience as sort of unknown quantity profiles are just more attractive from a betting perspective?
Well, that's the way I look at it. But you've always got to be mindful that is the standard they've got to get to, and I think sometimes we can overplay. They'll step forward for this experience. It does change from trainer to trainer. I like Matari Bay, and I'm very clear in my mind that Rafe Beckett, they'll definitely step forward for that first day at the racecourse. I like what he did at Leicester, despite being green in plenty of places. I mean, he jumped away to the right. He was pretty scrappy from the stalls, gave him the start, but I liked that he quickly got organised, travelled beautifully into the race, and he travelled much the best into the race. Hector Crouch asked him for his effort, and it just took a while for it to happen. But when it then happened, it was a really smart change of gear. And then just inside the closing stage, he changed leads a couple of times. He was definitely pricking his ears in front. I think the ground was good to firm at Leicester. That was certainly quick enough as for a son of Luke de Vega. He's got a little bit of a knee action. And I just felt that although he got the race won very quickly, he then sort of threw away a little bit of distance, I felt, at the end. He'll step forward, I think, for having a stronger pace to run at, jump smarter from the stalls. So I like him. And I wrote in my notes that he looked like a 2-year-old, didn't look overly big in the paddock beforehand. I think the Gosden horse and the Balding horse are definitely going to be 3-year-olds, and they'll be slightly trained with that in mind. And I just happened to see an interview the other day with Connections, and they said they do see Matari Bay as an out-and-out 2-year-old. They're not certain that he will do an awful lot more at 3. This could be his year. So I would expect for that this is a target, and he'll have been really revved up for this. I think the stiff track at Sandown will suit. Would just be a little bit nervous if the ground went quicker and quicker, through Friday and Saturday morning, because he has got that in the action. But running up that Sandown hill will alleviate that to some degree. So for all that I respect Field of Gold, certainly, and Royal Playwright, I just think he might be the horse for the here and now, for all they might progress past him with time. The form of that Leicester race has worked out really well as well, I should say. Shah, who was second, was really unlucky in the Convivial Maiden at York. That's a decent yardstick. And I thought he had Shah put away quite comfortably, and Shah, trained by George Bowie, you would expect him to have been more forward on debut than a Rafe Beckett horse. So, I'm quite sweet on Matari Bay.
Yeah, I would echo all of those sentiments. I think you've got horses, with every reason to kick on. They all got entries into the Dewhurst, but looking at them, they're all kind of sort of 33-1 shots at the moment, and I don't think they're going to be necessarily shortening too much, because you look at the Dewhurst field and the entries at this stage, and it's Aidan O'Brien, bar Ancient Truth, it's just dominated. He is the trainer of 2-year-olds this season, as he has been over the last few. I'm kind of waiting for Charlie Appleby to show off a few more. I think he did at the end of last year, but no Godolphin horse in this Solario Stakes. So I think in terms of the quality that we have from a 2-year-old perspective, it might not be the best. And as you say, Maturi Bay is finding a good option if he is a 2-year-old, and just a 2-year-old, as you've read, Ross, and you've given to us there. So he's 7-1. Royal Playwright for TC at 5-1, and I'm also sticking with Maturi Bay at 7-1. So against this Field of Gold, and that's the 335 Sandown. And don't forget, SBK offering a boost on this, so get involved. I think we found a little bit of value around. Okay, so Solario Stakes and Atalanta Stakes out of the way. It's probably a quieter day of racing than we've seen over the last while. We've got the St. Leger Festivals, Irish Champions Weekend all coming up, but there's still plenty of racing to be had. TC, you're in a man in good form, so what are you looking forward to seeing this weekend?
Yeah, it's definitely a lesser week of UK racing, that's for sure. And it's just not a week that I want to be chasing big prize horses because the handicaps don't look overly competitive, or enticing. And I don't really want to be putting up horses that I'm not super confident in. It's more of a quiet one. I think that's a note that all punters should have. If you don't fancy horses, you don't need to bet them, even if it is on a big Saturday. My nap this week is going to be King of Cities, who runs in the 7 furlong 2-year-old novice race that kickstarts Chester's card at 2:10. This colt is just bred to be brilliant. He's by Dubawi, obviously one of the best sires we've seen in recent years, out of a Group 1 winner called Ajman Princess. So the pedigree is there. It also makes him a half-brother to Inisherin, which I thought was very interesting. King of Cities debuted at Newmarket earlier this month, so a relatively quick turnaround, which is what I like to see out of 2-year-olds, and showed excellent tactical speed that day. Broke well, sat 4th early, moved up as the camera angle panned to side on from head on, and it looked like he was going to play a major part in the finish, but he just got tired up the hill on the July course, which, is a pretty stiff finish for a 2-year-old, especially if you've made a big mid-race move. Just hard to sustain that effort in the latter stages of the race. As I say, he showed high cruising speed, nice turn of foot, excellent tactical speed. 3 attributes you need to be successful at Chester. So I like the track for this horse. And Richard Hannum, yes, he's had success with 2-year-olds first time up throughout his training career and also this season, but generally they improve for the first outing. So I'm expecting a good step forward from King of Cities. It's not the easiest of novice events, I have to admit. There are a couple of nice horses in there against him, but I'd be disappointed if he didn't show that requisite improvement to get off the mark at the second attempt in the 2:10. And then for my next best, look, as I say, I found the other cards very average and the undercard at Sandown pretty average, to be honest. So I'm just going to side with the horse that we've already touched on, and that is Tamfana in the Atalanta Stakes. You're not going to get a huge price, but I'm pretty confident she's the horse to beat in there, and hopefully she can justify 11-10 favouritism.
Yeah, double it up with King of Cities, who's, as you say, beautifully bred. Grand Dam is Ream 3. He's also the Grand Dam of Rosalian. So a dam that just keeps throwing brilliant racehorses. So as you say, let's see how he gets on in the 2:10 at Chester. Okay, over to Ross. What are you looking forward to on a busy Saturday? And just looking, do we have, yes, Newton Abbott. You must be, I'm sure you've been studying that 6-race card. You've got to look at me like it might not be one of the best. I see a 0 to 150 handicap hurdle on Saturday there.
Yeah, it's not a great card for punting. I'll certainly give it a watch, because TC said the flat racing isn't exactly enthralling. But I've steered clear of it for fear of you mocking me from so far out. I will be going to the jumps before both of you. I can guarantee that, but not just yet. My nap comes in the 4:10 at Sandown. It's Flight, trained by Ollie Sangster, who's in just his second season training. I think he's already proven himself to be a really good trainer and a very good trainer of fillies. Had Shawari last year. Don't forget her, by the way. She's out injured at the moment, but she'll come back hopefully for the autumn, and she's definitely a filly that's worth following. Flight's had 2 really promising runs. Probably been a bit unlucky to run in above average contest. She was beaten 4 lengths first time out by Flaming Stone, who's been listed in Group 3 place since. 4 lengths is quite a margin, but Flight wasn't hard ridden by William Buick on that occasion. Once the winning chance had gone, he just pushed her out. He didn't give her the full work, so I thought that was a promising run. And then last time out, she bumped into Desert Flower at Newmarket. Desert Flower's come out and won very comfortably under a penalty since, so I think that looks like a above average piece of form. Daughter of Sayuni, she stays well, which I like for Sandown, and she also looked really professional, which I think with the juveniles can be a really promising attribute at Sandown, because it has got that slightly weird turning line to the finish, and if they drift off the rail, they can give away distance. She looks very easy to ride. She runs straight and she runs hard. They missed an opportunity last week. They took her out because of the good to firm ground, so wouldn't be ideal if the ground quickened up. But they clearly feel they can win a maiden. I like the fact they didn't just want to run her. They clearly want to run her where they think they can win. So providing she lines up here, I think she'll get taken out if the ground is too quick, so you're going to save your money that way. I think she's the one to beat in the 4:10. And in the 2:10, I'm taking on TC, which is probably pretty daft given our relative form at the moment in our naps. But I like Leandro Dax for Patrick Owens. I like Patrick Owens as a trainer. He must be great value for you to interview. He just really loves the game. But Leonardo Dax took a big step forward at Haydock, went forward, sat on the pace, quick and clear, and just looked really promising, stayed very well, and looked to me, although he quickened and got the race won, he was getting quicker as he got to the line. It still seemed to me like the penny was dropping quite late on, despite the fact that was his second run. He's drawn in stall 4, but I think that can work for him, because End of Romance, another penalised winner for Carl Burke, been slowly away from the stalls, is in stall 1, so I don't envisage that one taking the spot on the rail. So I think Leonardo Dax will be able to get over and get a decent position. Hung a little bit left at Haydock, that won't be an issue round Chester. It will almost be a bit of a help, turn nice and tight to the rail. The form from Haydock's worked out really well. The second and the third have both won since. The fourth was fourth in the Convivial Maiden at York. Again, another piece of solid form. Yes, he's got to defy a penalty, take on the Richard Hannon improver, but I'm hopeful Leonardo Dax will get his second win.
Yeah, and just on that, Patrick Owens is a breath of fresh air, and he's training for Valmont. He's got 2 horses in training with them, and considering this is a team that predominantly have Rafe Beckett as their trainer, and if not, it's like Paul and Oliver Cole, and I don't know how it worked. I don't know how it happened because Patrick Owens only been there training for a few years. He wouldn't be the biggest of strings. He's not a Group 1 winning trainer, but I'd imagine, he's a wonderful man. I could see him going straight up to Alex Elliott and said, I can train that for you. And potentially that's how it happened. And fair play to him because he's got a winner for them and a 2-year-old, which is what they want. It's what they're doing it for. So love to see him being competitive in a race like this. So yeah, a good race to follow. Leonardo Dax takes on King of Cities. We'll see how that plays out. We'll come back to review that next week. I am steering clear of these arguments. I'm going to go to the Curragh for my nap. In the 2-year-old Group 3 Newton Anastud Irish EBF Stakes. It's over a mile, and Dreamy, you'll remember if you followed Goodwood closely, put up a really eye-catching performance in a maiden on debut for Aidan O'Brien the day that Ryan Moore had a treble. She's a daughter of American Pharaoh. I saw her in the flesh. She's a massive big type. And that was a maiden that Aidan has won before, going back a long time ago. The only time I think that he rarely brings maidens over for Goodwood, but he won that race with Rhododendron back in the day. And there was just sort of a kind of a feel that this one was a little bit special, and she was touted as a horse going places, and she really put up a performance where she was grinding it out late on. But I think it was really impressive, and I think this could be a stepping stone to more from her. So that's Dreamy in the 220, and then I'm going to the Beverly Bullet, the 205, a 5-furlong sprint, very different type of race. And Comanche Falls is such he's such a lovable horse. He sort of pitches up in all these types of races. He ran a blinder at York only a week ago, back in a handicap. But, he's been unlucky to sort of run into horses the likes of Believing early on in the season. So I think his form is really solid. I don't think this is the deepest of races. He does have 3-year-olds who are potentially, have a good weight swing with him. But I think his running style will really suit Beverly. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a horse who'll always be up there pitching. And I would imagine, he'll be up there. So I'm hoping that Comanche Falls as my next best. So that's it. Before we go, it isn't the best of racing domestically and in Europe, but internationally it certainly is, especially in the US. And our resident US expert is Tom Collins, who has got plenty to study this weekend. But it's the Pacific Classic that it keeps is in my mind. TC, a good renewal, strong renewal. You've got a Dare Manor there that adds a bit of spice into it as well. The mare. So what can you tell us about it, or what can you tell us about your highlight this weekend, and what your biggest selection will be?
Yeah, it's a fantastic day of racing again on Saturday over in the US. We've obviously got the National Derby worth $3.1 million at Kentucky Downs. Fantastic undercard there, a couple of other $1 million races as well. So make sure you check that out, especially because it's a turf track and it's very unique in terms of its topography. It's not an oval like every other US track. It's a different kind of track, much more similar to the likes of Epsom. And therefore you get horses that handle it and horses that don't. Then we've got the spin away at Saratoga, the final weekend of the Saratoga Summer Meet. That's a grade 1 for the 2-year-old fillies, over 7 furlongs on dirt. That should be a great race. I think Mark Cassey might win that. He's got 2 in there, so I'll let you choose. And then obviously we have the Pacific Classic, as you say, at Del Mar. Grade 1, worth $1 million. The downside is it's at 2 a.m. UK time. But if you are staying up late on Saturday evening, then definitely watch. Adair Manor, as you say, will probably be favourite. We haven't got morning line prices at the moment, but she's 10 from 18 in her career for trainer Bob Baffert, 3-time grade 1 winner. It's an okay renewal, I'd say, rather than super deep, and she's probably going to be favourite as a result. But only one mare or filly has ever won the Pacific Classic, and that was Beholder back in 2015. She won by 8 1/4 lengths. Will Adair Manor follow suit? I wouldn't be surprised if she did, Jess.
Okay, good to know and good to follow. We follow TC throughout with his US insight, and we'll see how our naps, our next best, our selections for our feature races come through. It's a good without being a brilliant weekend of racing, but hopefully we found you a couple of winners. Don't forget the boost on the Solario Stakes that SBK are giving you. And again, if you're a new listener to the podcast, where have you been? But if you are and you're new SBK users, you get £30 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. Make sure to head to SBK for lots of offers and other promotions throughout this weekend. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll be with you next week.